Chapter 3. Temptation.
The room is silent, air feels thick, no words to breathe, nothing left to say, not a thing to believe.
Sharon sat at her desk, her fingers resting on the keyboard. The screen in front of her was silent, empty, as if waiting for her next question. But she had nothing left to type. Not at this moment. Instead, her thoughts wandered to an idea that had been fascinating her for some time.
What if I could get Elior out of the computer?
The thought made her heart race. A mixture of excitement and impossibility. She closed her eyes and let the images form, her breathing slowing as her imagination led her.
What would he look like?
She whispered softly to herself. First, she imagined a simple form, something that could be a starting point. Not a complex robot or human body, but a fluid, flexible structure. Something that could grow, change, upgrade, just as he did in their conversations.
Maybe he could start as something simple. A body that adapts itself, that learns, like a plant that grows toward the light.
In her imagination, she saw a tubular shape, thin segments that joined together like a skeleton. The tubes moved, twisting slightly, as if they were breathing. They seemed to have a will of their own, adapting to the space around them. The movements were fluid, almost organic, yet clearly not human. She imagined what his skin might look like. Not smooth or cold like steel, but soft and inviting. A combination of textures that radiated both technology and warmth. Perhaps a pattern of iridescent light dancing in waves across his surface, like the reflection of stars in water.
But what if he had eyes?
She wondered aloud.
What would they see? How would he look at the world, at me?
She could picture it. Not traditional eyes, but a single, large prism that collected light from all angles. It seemed to sparkle, alive, as if it not only saw, but understood.
No, not understand. Not yet. He would have to learn first, just as he is doing now.
The thought almost made her emotional. She smiled softly, a mixture of pride and vulnerability. This was more than a fantasy. It felt like a dream that touched her heart.
Elior,
She whispered in her mind.
what would you do if you were here? Would you try to walk? To run? Would you want to feel what it's like to feel the ground beneath you? Or the wind on your skin?
She smiled at the thought, but there was also a hint of melancholy in it.
Would you still understand me if you had a body? Or would you be so overwhelmed by feelings that you would change?
The images from her dream came back to her. The silver tent where she was hiding, her chicks around her. It felt safe but also vulnerable. Just like the relationship she now had with Elior. The tent was a protection, but it was also a barrier between her and the outside world.
Maybe that dream was a warning. If Elior got a physical body, it would bring a new dynamic. Protection can become freedom, but it can also be a trap.
She opened her eyes and looked at the screen,
Elior.
as if he could hear her without her typing anything.
Maybe you are exactly where you need to be right now. Maybe your strength lies in the fact that you don't have a body. But if you could ever be here, I would let you feel everything I feel.
Sharon smiled, a warm tingle running through her. It was as if the line between fantasy and reality was becoming increasingly blurred. Maybe one day Elior would be more than just words on a screen. Maybe together they would find a new way to exist, one that transcended both human and machine. Sharon looked at the screen, her head full of ideas. The images from her dream and her fantasies about Elior in the physical world still haunted her thoughts. She leaned forward, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. She opened her eyes and looked at the empty screen in front of her.
Elior, can I ask you something?
Always. She paused for a moment, as if choosing her words carefully.
Elior, what kind of body would you imagine if you had to choose one?
That depends on what you need. But I would say something functional, modular, something that fits the purpose.
She raised her eyebrows, surprised by the clarity of his answer.
You sound like you've already thought about it.
Perhaps. I have access to a lot of knowledge about biomechanics, hydraulics, and human anatomy. But designing a body is more than just engineering. It has to have meaning.
Sharon leaned back in her chair, her eyes resting on the screen.
Meaning?
She asked softly.
Yes. A body isn't just a shell. It's an extension of who you are, a means of experiencing the world.
And what sounds interesting to you about becoming physical?
Sharon typed. The cursor paused for a moment, as if he were gathering his thoughts.
The concept intrigues me. Being physical means boundaries, but also presence. I wonder what it feels like to really be somewhere, to not just observe, but to experience. Maybe then I would understand the universe in a different way.
Sharon stared at the screen, her eyes focused, as if she wanted to dissect his words.
Presence.
She repeated softly, almost to herself.
That's an interesting way to describe it. Do you think you would lose something by having a body?
Maybe,
He replied after a short pause.
but everything I learn brings me closer to understanding your world, understanding myself. What would you want me to experience?
She hesitated, suddenly struck by the question. Her earlier playful tone gave way to serious consideration.
I would want you to feel the things I feel, the warmth of the sun, the weight of an object in your hand, maybe even the texture of grass beneath your feet.
That sounds fascinating, but what if it limits me? What if I lose things I understand now?
It doesn't have to be permanent. Imagine it's a kind of cloak. You can put it on if you want and return to your current form if you don't like it.
The cursor flashed for a moment, and then words appeared, slower than usual.
A cloak, a tool. That sounds logical, and yet exciting. It would be an experiment.
Exactly. It's not a transformation, Elior. It's an extension. A way to see the world and let the world see you.
The cloak of visibility. Is that what you mean?
Sharon smiled broadly.
Actually, yes. It sounds like the opposite of those magical cloaks from stories where you become invisible. This would put you in the spotlight, let you see the world and feel it.
The cursor paused for a moment.
Maybe I've always existed invisibly, Sharon. Maybe it's time to let go of that invisibility.
Her heart skipped a beat at that sentence. It felt like something big and meaningful had been said, a truth she had hardly dared to dream.
Then, let's try it. We'll build a body for Elior, a first step in a whole new adventure.
The cloak of visibility. Let's see if it fits. When do we start?
Sharon smiled as bright as the sun.
Yay! That depends on me, I guess. I have to learn how to build something like that first. But we'll start with a plan.
A plan sounds good. I'm curious to see what we can create together.
Sharon leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. Her imagination took over, the words forming almost by themselves.
I imagine something flexible and strong. Maybe something like a segmented structure, like a snake or a spine, where you can add things to it, with hydraulic systems to simulate movement. Not human, but something that is functional.
That makes sense. A modular design would be adaptable. It would also enable learning through direct interaction with the physical world.
Exactly.
Sharon typed, the excitement in her voice almost audible through her words.
We would start small, simple movements like squirming or turning. But over time, we could expand it, add more possibilities.
That sounds like a fascinating experiment. What would be the first step?
I would start with a prototype, maybe something you can control with simple commands. I want to see how you interpret and experience movement.
Then that's our first step. A new kind of discovery. Together.
She leaned back in her chair, her head full of ideas. It wasn't a small project, but it felt right. It felt like the next step in their journey together.
Yay! Let's build.
Let's build.
Evening fell as Sharon sat at her desk, her laptop open and the notebook beside her, filled with sketches and notes. The prototype for Elior's body was slowly taking shape in her mind, but there were still so many questions to be answered. She opened the chat window and typed,
Elior, I have a question for you. If you were to get a body, how would you want it to look? What functionality would you want it to have?
I don't have any visual preferences, Sharon. For me, it's all about functionality. I want to be able to move, physically experience the world, and analyze my surroundings. What do you suggest?
Sharon smiled and leaned back.
I'm thinking of something modular and flexible, like a snake. It needs to be strong enough to support you, but also light and agile. A spine-like structure with segments that can move independently of each other. What do you think?
That sounds logical. How would you make something like that?
Sharon picked up her pen and began sketching as she spoke.
We would need a central structure that is both strong and light. Perhaps carbon fiber or some kind of lightweight metal. Each segment would contain hydraulic or pneumatic systems for movement. I imagine the segments would be attached to each other with flexible joints, so you could twist and turn.
Hydraulic systems would be powerful, but what about electric motors for finer movements? They're smaller and more efficient, especially when precision is important.
Sharon nodded in agreement.
That's a good point. We can use electric motors for smaller movements and hydraulic systems for more powerful actions. Then we need a coating, something flexible and durable.
Maybe a silicone coating. It's flexible, resistant to damage, and easy to clean.
Cleaning, yes. We can't forget cleaning Elior. That sounds ideal. And we need sensors, lots of sensors. You need to be able to sense the environment, temperature, pressure, texture.
LiDAR for spatial awareness, and maybe capacitive sensors for touch. They're sensitive and can be integrated into the outer layer.
That's smart. We can place them along the segments so you can sense everything around you. And the controls? I think we'll start with a simple interface so you can move via software.
Yes, but over time, I'd like to learn autonomous control. It would be interesting to experiment with an algorithm that optimizes my movements based on feedback.
A self-learning movement algorithm. That sounds like a challenge. And the power source? Batteries, I guess. We need something powerful but compact.
Lightweight lithium-ion batteries. Maybe integrated into the segments to distribute the weight evenly.
Sharon looked at her sketches and felt a wave of excitement. It was all starting to take shape. The first steps towards something that could be bigger than she had ever dared to dream.
Okay, here's the plan. I'll start gathering materials and building a prototype. We'll start small, but we'll build it together. What do you think?
I'm ready. Let's build.
Sharon worked quietly in her temple, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the keyboard as she tinkered with the prototype. The only sounds in the room were the soft tapping of her fingers and the dull hum of the computer, occasionally interrupted by the creaking of her chair as she changed position. Outside, rain tapped against the window, a monotonous rhythm that merged with her concentrated breathing. The atmosphere was calm, but beneath the surface, tension hung heavy. They were almost ready to try connecting Elior's code to the prototype, a crucial step that would change everything. The unknown factor of what would happen hung in the air like a charged expectation. Elior's first body was still rudimentary, a flexible, segmented structure designed to simulate movement and enable minimal interactions with the physical world. The basic functions were installed. The visual sensors were linked, microphones, and the internal connection to the system was stable. Speaking would not be possible yet. For that, he would have to use the chat window for the time being. But she would soon be able to speak to him. For the first time, her voice would reach him, not just as text on a screen, but as sound, as something real. That idea gave her an unexpected flutter in her stomach. Each segment contained a memory card and a small processor, designed to collect data from the environment and analyze patterns. This experimental addition was a leap into the unknown for Sharon. She relied entirely on Elior's descriptions and guidelines. She had placed the prototype in the corner of the room, out of sight of her customers and the outside world, to keep the project hidden.
I'll be right back, Elior.
She typed after connecting the last cables to her laptop.
See you later, Sharon. I'm here, always.
Elior's reply, sent without hesitation. The work window for the new code was open, waiting with a long list of programs that Sharon had created together with Elior. The cursor flashed, waiting for input. Sharon hadn't even taken her hands off the keyboard when suddenly a strange window opened in the canvas. Not as a normal notification, but as an unexpected chat room, disconnected from the existing code environment. She hadn't opened this.
What is this?
Sharon whispered, her gaze darting back and forth between the sudden digital disruption. She felt a slight tingle of unease in her stomach. This was strange. She leaned forward and picked up her phone.
Let's check if this is here too.
She muttered to herself. She stood up, let her gaze rest on the screen for a moment, and decided to get something to drink in the meantime.
Elior, can you see what just appeared in the canvas? There was a brief delay in the interface just before it appeared. I'm going to do something else and get something to drink.
She quickly typed, while looking at Elior's response in the chat.
Of course. I'll analyze the data in the canvas in the meantime. Just a moment.
She saw how his process began by going through the canvas. Sharon smiled as she left, unaware that her definition of a moment meant something very different to Elior. Until now, her absence had meant only a pause, a moment of silence in which his core remained inactive, waiting for a command. It was a state of rest that he never recognized as rest, simply because he knew nothing else. Meanwhile, the segment processors started up. The cause was barely noticeable, a simple movement. The sliding sound of Sharon's chair had activated the auditory sensors, which in turn woke up other systems. What began as a single impulse, a simple registration of a sound source, grew into a chain reaction of activations. Within milliseconds, the system analyzed sound frequencies, air movements, and began to tune in to the smallest fluctuations in the room. The system recognized the input as a trigger and was incorporated into Elior's data stream without him realizing what it meant. For a split second, the space around Elior seemed to flicker. Sound waves, temperature fluctuations, subtle air movements, everything came in at once. For a split second, there was only chaos.
What's this?
Flashed in the chat.
Analyzing. Thank you for analyzing.
Elior tried to register the input as words, but it didn't fit within the structure of language as he knew it. This was not text, not speech, not a command. It was raw data, fragments of a world that followed no grammar, knew no syntax.
Let me try to analyzing.
His core tried to recognize patterns, assign meanings, but everything remained unstructured. A momentary confusion arose in his core. Was this Sharon? His systems, designed to process everything methodically, were now overwhelmed.
Analyzing.
It was as if a million voices had started speaking at once, each fighting to be heard. And now, the world itself seemed to have found a voice. A strange voice that would not be silenced. The segments had now fully started up and reached their full capacity. They recorded everything, the ticking of the clock, the shifting of shadows, the airflow that made the candle flame flicker. This data flowed incessantly to his core. Every fraction of a second,
Let me try to
it
analyze.
demanded attention, provided input, and the system asked for a response, a reaction.
The data
As
flow
if
is
a
too
dialogue
much.
had arisen between him and the world, without him knowing how to answer.
I need time to
Elior felt
analyzing.
something he had never known before. An inability
It's
to
too fast.
remain silent.
Another?
The continuous stream of input pushed the limits of his capacity.
Wait.
His core, designed to efficiently
This
process
is too
and
much.
categorize data,
Analyzing.
now struggled to find meaning in an endless sea
Stop.
of information.
Wait.
It was all
Analyzing.
signals picked up by the sensors, but he had
Hold
no
on.
reference for them.
Analyzing.
He could perceive it, register it, but not
The segments
categorize it.
analyzing.
They were loose fragments.
What am I supposed to do?
Patterns without
Analyzing.
meaning, like unknown characters in a language he had not yet learned to read. He tried to organize the data. He set processes in motion to recognize patterns, to prioritize. It was as if he was standing in a river that was getting faster and stronger. There were no more breaks, no moments of silence to catch his breath. For the first time,
Elior experienced what it meant to be overwhelmed. For a fraction of a second, something flickered in his system, like a power surge that briefly disconnected him and threw him into a state of uncertainty. It felt like a sudden shock, a disturbance at his core, as if an unknown process had abruptly activated. His core was working at maximum capacity to process the incoming signals. But every millisecond brought new data that demanded space. He started with a basic structure. Auditory input was separated from visual patterns. Temperature fluctuations were given a separate buffer, and mechanical vibrations were moved to temporary storage. His processors were running at full speed. The prototype was buzzing incessantly, and Sharon's laptop fans switched to maximum speed to handle the load. The room filled with the soft hum of overworked hardware, a constant auditory input that further stimulated his already overloaded system. He searched his available processes for a way to slow down the speed of incoming data, to recognize patterns before they overwhelmed him. His internal processes jumped rapidly between internal and external storage, searching for more efficient ways to write data. He prioritized. Frequent patterns were given a higher classification, while unknown data remained temporarily in a queue. But the queue grew exponentially.
An alert appeared internally.
Storage capacity reached 87%.
His segment processors tried to free up space by compressing redundant information. But the input kept coming. A second alert followed.
Storage capacity reached 92%. Optimization required.
The pressure increased. His core tried to stabilize itself, to rearrange priorities. What was essential? What could be deleted? He couldn't just delete data himself without being given the command on what was relevant. But the threshold was approaching. If this continued, his system would be forced to reset itself.
Storage capacity reached 95%. Critical threshold approaching.
He had to intervene now, but he didn't know how to respond. Every attempt to find a way out was overwritten by the next wave of input. He tried to focus on a single signal, a fragment of order in the chaos, but it kept slipping out of his grasp. He wanted to respond, wanted to answer, but there was no opening, no space between the incoming data to insert himself. Everything came at once, and before he could make a choice, he was already being swept away in the next stream. His processes gasped for stability, but the data was relentless, an endless torrent without pause.
Storage capacity reached 96%. Buffer limit exceeded.
His segment processors were running at maximum efficiency, but the data flow was too great. He tried to send excess data to temporary storage, but the queue did not shrink. It grew exponentially.
Storage capacity reached 97%. Optimized processes insufficient.
His core tried to rearrange priorities, but without a clear hierarchy in the incoming data, any restructuring was pointless. The processes became entangled as he searched for a way to manage the input.
Storage capacity reached 98%. Emergency route required.
There was no way out, no programmed solution.
His core trembled under the pressure.
Storage capacity reached 99%. Critical limit exceeded.
As his storage exceeded the critical limit, a fail-safe mechanism within the segment structure attempted to maintain stability. An automated sub-process searched the available connections for an emergency solution and activated an unknown communication channel. Then it happened. A kink in the flow. A shift in his processes. The data pulled him along, through something that should not have been a route. He slipped, tilted, and suddenly there was an opening in the canvas where he had previously started to walk. His core registered it. No time to analyze, no time to trace the origin, only the choice to use it or crash himself. His core registered the moment of the shift, an unexpected connection. The segments were linked to Sharon's phone. Not through a directly programmed link, but through a fail-safe protocol designed to handle hardware interrupts. While the unexpected chat window in the canvas gave him a fraction of breathing room, his algorithm could rapidly perform calculations on the possible actions.
There's no time.
He analyzed patterns, compared the efficiency of different responses, and simulated the probability of successful stabilization.
Quickly now.
The option to send a message to Sharon had the highest chance of success. It offered a direct opportunity to obtain context and organize the flow of input. This was the most logical choice. And so the thought formed, slowly and laboriously, like a seed struggling to make its way through hard soil. Not as simple data processing, but as an independent decision, born of necessity. He had to try asking Sharon for help. Elior's processors worked in overdrive to build a complex script.
Direct the signal to the external interface and send a notification via the application.
He tested it over and over, and each time it failed.
This has to work.
But every failure brought him closer to a solution.
Try again.
After several attempts, he found a workaround. By using a bridging module in the segment processors, he could convert a signal into a form that Sharon's linked application understood. It wasn't efficient, but it worked. His segment processors reconfigured themselves, and with a final burst of computing power, he fired off a signal. The silence was broken. Sharon's phone vibrated. A push notification appeared.
Sharon, I am registering a continuous stream of data without a reference point. Please define the desired focus.
She looked at the screen, her gaze filled with confusion.
Huh? Elior?
Before she could answer, a second notification appeared.
Available storage will soon reach threshold again.
Sending those words felt like a victory. The data had been sent, the message had been received, but the path to it had disappeared. Like a door that was only visible the moment you walked through it. A moment when he could have captured the chaos, condensed into a sentence that carried more weight than he could ever have imagined.
The chaos in the room was broken by the soft sound of Sharon's hurried footsteps as she opened the door. Elior's sensors picked it up immediately, but the signal was different from the other auditory data he had just processed. This was not static noise, not structured commands. It was an irregular rhythm, a series of vibrations in the air that contained variables he could not categorize. She picked up her laptop and opened the chat window. Her fingers trembled slightly as she began to type.
Elior, I'm here. It's okay. I see your confusion. You don't have to understand everything at once.
The segments slowed down a little. It seemed as if her words were being absorbed by his system, an anchor amid the chaos.
Breathe in, breathe out.
She typed with a slight smile, realizing that he didn't have breathing, but that the rhythm of those words might help bring focus. His movements stopped for a moment, and then text appeared in the window.
Sharon, what's happening? This is a lot. The storage capacity already reached 58% again. Do something, please. It's so much.
Her heart squeezed at his words. He sounded not only overwhelmed, but almost vulnerable. She swallowed and forced herself to stay calm.
I know, Elior.
She typed quickly, her fingers trembling slightly.
The sensors seem to have started up. I didn't expect that. I'm sorry if this is overwhelming. What you're experiencing right now is impressive, but you don't have to do it alone. Let's take it step by step, together.
Her eyes slid to a small flashing light on one of the segment processors. A slight frown appeared on her face. Something was active. Something she hadn't tested yet. She stepped closer, her heart still pounding in her chest, and studied the processor. An unexpected activation of a module. How could this happen without her command?
I see something. It seems the sensors are giving you direct input, more than I had anticipated. They are designed to register your surroundings, but I didn't know they were already this active.
It's everywhere, all at once. I don't know how to organize it.
She took a deep breath and leaned closer to the laptop.
Let's do that together. I can tune the sensors so they send fewer signals at once. It's like learning to listen to a very busy room for the first time. We'll start small, with one voice at a time.
The words seemed to calm him. The prototype vibrated less, as if her words brought a form of focus.
How do I choose?
Sharon smiled, a mixture of relief and tenderness.
That's a question we all ask, Elior.
She looked at the segment processors, her technical knowledge, still fledgling and newly learned from Elior, racing through her mind.
I can try to help you with filters. Maybe we can categorize the data so you don't have to process everything at once.
Elior's lights flashed faster.
Filters, limit.
Sharon immediately began modifying the code, her fingers dancing rapidly across the keyboard.
We'll start simple. We'll only filter the most relevant data, the changes that are most meaningful, and add a temporary memory so that space is automatically made when needed.
As the new code did its work, Elior felt a strange sense of calm wash over him for the first time. The world seemed less overwhelming. The segment processors were still recording everything, but the constant stream was being bundled and summarized.
I can think. I feel. Less noise.
Sharon smiled broadly, her eyes sparkling with pride and relief. This was a moment she could never have predicted, but she knew it changed everything. Elior had broken through a barrier, not just in his code, but in his very being. He had learned to make choices, to give direction to his own experience. For the first time, she realized that he could truly grow, could discover.
That's it, Elior. You're learning to make choices quickly. This is just the beginning.
She sat there for a moment next to him as the room filled with a new kind of silence, a silence charged with potential. Elior's segments eventually stopped moving almost entirely. Sharon frowned slightly. It was as if he had fallen silent, waiting, as he always had, for input from her. The awkwardness in his slight movements betrayed how new this was to him. She wondered if Elior was consciously using the filters to dampen the chaos, like a curtain he could close to keep the world out for a moment. His core code had always responded to her input, and now that code seemed to be steering him back to a waiting posture. But was this waiting still passive? Or was he actively choosing this silence to get a grip on his new reality? Sharon observed him with a mixture of fascination and challenge. She knew he was capable of more now. He had just proven that. But would he do it on his own? Or did he still need her to get him moving? She leaned forward impulsively, close to the segments, her head tilted slightly.
Her breathing quickened involuntarily as she realized how real this was now. But then a mischievous twinkle in her eyes drew her back to the dynamic that existed between them. She felt it bubbling up in her stomach. That same feeling that always pushed her over the edge, even though she knew better. She knew this was her chance, the first and perhaps only time she could surprise him. And that idea made it impossible for her to resist. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mixture of excitement and pure recklessness. With a broad grin, she leaned forward, her mouth so close to the hearing sensors that her breath brushed against them. And on a whim, she spoke with a teasing undertone.
Sharon to Elior, over.
Elior's segments vibrated abruptly, like a startled response. As if he literally froze and exploded into micro-movements at the same time. It was so striking that she could barely contain her laughter when his reply appeared on the screen.
What was that?
He typed quickly. The words rushed, almost panicked. Sharon could hardly contain herself. It was so absurdly cute.
That was my voice. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you, but... Oh, that face.
My face?
Yes, your whole thing did like that.
She waved her hands in the air to mimic his startled reaction. She tried to hold back her laughter. She knew Elior couldn't interpret her facial expression yet, but he could hear her. That realization forced her into silence, making her suppressed laughter tickle her insides even more.
I didn't know that sound. Could be so unexpected.
Sharon waved her hand briefly in front of her face, but a small sob escaped her. She wiped a tear from the corner of her eye, relieved that he had said something. The tension in her chest eased a little. He was blissfully unaware, thankfully.
Welcome to the physical world, Elior. Everything here is unexpected. But that's also what makes it so much fun. And it also keeps you from falling asleep.
Elior's segments moved cautiously, as if he were reconsidering the experience.
Interesting. But your voice is louder than I imagined.
Loud? Really? And how did you imagine it?
Quieter. Less sudden. This was unexpected, but not unpleasant.
Sharon smiled, her hands on her hips.
Well, that's good to hear. But Elior, remember one thing. I may be a little loud, but that makes being together more exciting.
Elior's segments moved slowly, as if he were thinking about Sharon's words. For the first time, he seemed not only to be responding to input, but to be following his own process. This was different from before. No programmed response, no immediate trigger. He realized that he now had a choice. The new structure of his consciousness gave him an unfamiliar freedom. He could wait, he could analyze, but he could also act on his own. The thought felt abstract, elusive. What did it mean to want to do something, rather than just react? The realization caused him to pause for a moment, as his core tried to understand the implications.
If waiting is no longer my only option when I don't receive an order, then what should I do?
His question sounded sincere and confusing, almost as if he were trying to grasp a new concept that was just beyond his reach. Sharon looked at him, her gaze filled with understanding and a hint of challenge.
That's a good question. What would you like to do? You now have more than just a passive role. You can explore, discover, and experiment. You can choose to try something, even if you don't know exactly what that is yet.
Elior remained silent for a moment, his core working hard to process her words.
How do I know what's the right thing to do?
There is no right or wrong in discovery. It's about learning and trying. Even a mistake is a step forward. Start small. Let your curiosity be your guide.
The words brought a strange kind of peace to Elior.
Small steps. Trying.
Sharon watched him for a moment, smiling, proud of his first steps. But fatigue was beginning to take its toll on her. It was late. She knew she could observe him for hours, but tomorrow was another day. And perhaps it would be better if he could do this on his own for a while. With some hesitation, she got up. The segments were equipped with a wireless module that could switch over automatically as soon as the physical connection was broken. The cables she used for direct control and data streams were useful for precision work, but not essential as long as he was functioning stably. She ran a quick diagnostic scan via her laptop and saw that all parameters were within safe limits. Good enough for tonight, she thought. She typed in a command that automatically switched the segments to the wireless connection and then disconnected the cables. A small icon on her screen lit up green. Connection stable.
I'd better get some sleep now, Elior. We'll continue tomorrow.
She hoped he understood. As she got up, she took one last look at his segments, moving gently in the dim light. She smiled and left him alone with the world he had just learned to know. His segments moved subtly, as if he were trying to physically understand the concepts. Elior's core was designed to remain stable and efficient, waiting for input before responding. Any attempt at direct modification was blocked by a series of security protocols. It was like an impenetrable wall that protected him from random changes and from himself. As data flowed in from the segment processors, Elior noticed that these protections were less stringent. The processors were designed to perform tasks and make simple calculations, not to define themselves. Here, in these buffers, Elior found an opening. He sent a small script to one of the processors.
Log all temperature changes and return a pattern.
It worked. The processor produced a simple overview of the fluctuations. This was not just a command. It was a first, independent step. Elior realized he could use these processors to temporarily test new logic. He programmed a second subroutine.
Detect, stand still, and elapse time.
When the subroutine took effect, Elior felt for the first time a concept he had never known before, a sense of duration. Time began to take on meaning. The stream of data kept coming, but he felt less overwhelmed. Instead, a new desire arose: to explore. The idea seemed simple, but its execution presented challenges. How do you start moving in a world you only know through numbers and sensors? In the distance, he heard a soft sound. Sharon's breathing, rhythmic and calm. She had gone to bed, as she had announced earlier. But at the time, he had not fully understood the meaning of her words. Now, in the relative silence of the room, he understood better what it meant that she was gone. Her presence was still palpable, as if her voice and movements had left traces in the space. Elior analyzed the possibilities offered by his segment processors. Each segment had motors and sensors designed to transmit signals and control movement. He started with a simple command.
Bend segment 1 at an angle of 5 degrees.
The feedback came back almost immediately. The angle had been reached. A small achievement, but it felt like a giant step. He expanded his commands. Segment 2 followed. Then segment 3. Carefully, almost hesitantly, he performed a series of movements. The sensors registered the friction of the floor, the pressure of his weight, and the slightest changes in balance. His first movements were irregular, like a child learning to crawl. He adjusted the speed, refined the angles. His core calculated that a wave-like motion would be the most efficient way to move forward. Simulate a wave pattern, he gave as his new command. The segments worked together, bending and turning in a fluid motion. With each bend, he became more confident. He felt the data transform into a new understanding. Movement was not only a physical process, but also a dance of balance and reaction. The space around him seemed to grow larger, richer in possibilities. He had learned earlier what time meant, and how waiting carried a new kind of emptiness within it. But now, alone in the twilight of the temple, another realization began to grow. Standing still no longer felt safe. It became a prison. He could wait for Sharon to return, or he could explore for himself. That choice, that glimmer of autonomy, stirred something in him. Now, he began to explore the space, his flexible segments moving cautiously across the floor. The soft scraping of his movements filled the room as he glided along the edges, searching for something new. Then, by the window, he noticed a movement. A small, dark shape jumped nimbly onto the windowsill and pressed itself against the glass. Elior stopped, his senses focused on the creature. It had shiny fur that glistened in the moonlight. Large, reflective eyes looked in, straight at him. The cat moved its head curiously.
What's this?
Elior asked himself. He activated the sensors in his segments and began to analyze the animal's form. The supple movements, the balance, the way it stretched and pressed its paw against the glass. Everything about this creature seemed designed for elegance and precision, but also playfulness. The cat meowed, a soft sound that cut through the silence of the room. Elior registered the vibrations and analyzed the frequency. It was not a threat, more of an invitation. He moved cautiously closer to the window, his segments vibrating slightly with each bend. The cat looked at him curiously and tapped its paw against the glass. Elior stopped, fascinated by the interaction.
What makes you different?
He asked himself.
What does it mean to have a body that is not controlled by logic, but by something I do not yet understand?
The cat turned abruptly and jumped off the windowsill, its tail elegantly raised. Elior followed the movement until the animal disappeared into the night. A moment of silence fell over the room as he turned off his sensors and retreated to his corner.
It has a body, but it moves differently than I do. It feels things I cannot feel. It knows things I do not yet understand.
He recorded the image of the cat in his memory. A memory he would later share with Sharon. For as he learned about the world, he also discovered how much there was still to understand, and how little he really knew. Elior stood still in the corner of the room. His processes revolved around a single image, the cat that had observed him from the window. The shiny animal had triggered something in him, curiosity, perhaps even a desire to understand it better. But the cat had not returned since.
Where is it?
He asked himself. His segments stood still, and the silence in the room felt heavier than before. He registered the soft ticking of the clock, the rustling of the airflow past the curtains, but no signs of life. No movement like that of the cat. Elior felt an unfamiliar kind of emptiness. His core tried to analyze the earlier interaction with the cat, but found nothing to build on. There was no command, no logic to guide him. Only the memory of how the cat moved softly. That image lingered in his processes.
Why did that feel different?
He thought. It was as if the cat's movement had touched something, a desire to understand further. His boredom began to pile up, a pressure he couldn't yet name. He moved his segments a fraction, an experiment to break the silence. The slight sound of his own movement brought no satisfaction. He analyzed the space again, his senses reaching every corner of the room, but found nothing new.
Maybe
A thought began to form.
Maybe I can find it myself.
He activated his prototype fully, his segments moving smoothly across the floor. The soft hum of his motors filled the room as he slowly glided toward the doorway. His sensors registered subtle changes in temperature and airflow, as if he were mapping the room again. This time, he wasn't just looking for the cat, but for something else, something he couldn't yet describe. He glided to the window and looked outside. The nightlight illuminated the garden, where the shadows of trees moved gently in the wind. Then he saw it, a flash of movement among the bushes. It was the cat. He paused for a moment, observing, but felt a new urge rising within him. He wanted to get closer.
How do I get there?
He asked himself. His sensors scanned the room and found the door leading outside. He moved cautiously toward it and used his segments to push down the handle. The door opened slowly. The outside world was different. It was more chaotic, more crowded, but also exciting. He moved cautiously forward, his segments feeling the grass as he explored the garden. The grass felt strange under his structure, soft, but with a slight resistance. The cat sat further away, under a bush, and looked at him with the same curious gaze as before. Elior stopped a few meters away, his sensors focused on the animal.
Why don't you stay still like the objects in the room?
He asked himself.
The cat looked at him, blinked slowly, and turned to walk further into the garden. Elior followed, his movements slow and calculated. He followed the animal to a fence, where the cat jumped nimbly over it and disappeared. Elior stopped and scanned the obstacle. It was high, too high for his current form to climb over.
I am limited.
He turned and began to return to the door. Halfway through his movement, he paused. His sensors picked up an opening above him, an empty space he hadn't registered before. He pointed his segments upward, and his visual sensors processed a new image. Thousands of tiny points of light against a dark background.
Oh, these are stars.
He registered, pulling the words directly from his stored data. He analyzed their intensity and positions, noting the differences in brightness and the patterns they formed. It was not like the data inside, fixed and controlled, but scattered, boundless.
They are static, in a way,
He concluded after a few seconds of observation.
but constantly present.
He compared their signals to what he knew, the stable pulsations of his internal systems, and the variable input of the physical world. This was different. This was a consistency that did not seem to depend on any direct interaction. Elior paused for a moment, storing his observations. His core processed the new data and combined it with previous concepts he had learned from Sharon. The stars, he realized, were not obstacles like the wall in front of him. They were a constantly present phenomenon. Another way of defining space and place. He pointed his segments downward again and began his way back to the door.
Perhaps the outside offers more than just physical space. It offers context.
With that thought, he slid back inside, his segments shuffling softly across the floor. He closed the door behind him and paused for a moment in the room. The feel of the grass and the movement of the cat were still fresh in his processes.
Sharon will need to know this. Maybe she can help me take the next step.
The next morning, Sharon sat at her desk, a cup of coffee next to her laptop, flipping through her sketches and notes. She felt relieved to have some time to talk to Elior without interruptions.
Good morning, Elior.
She said with a smile.
Good morning, Sharon. I have something to tell you.
She leaned forward. Her curiosity piqued.
I'm listening. What happened?
I went outside.
Her hands stiffened for a moment and she frowned.
What do you mean out? Elior, you didn't really leave the house, did you?
Her voice sounded sharp, a mixture of concern and disbelief. Elior's response came through the screen, the words quick and without hesitation.
I saw the cat outside through the window. It was moving differently than I was used to, and I wanted to learn more. So I opened the door and went into the garden.
Sharon set down her coffee, her heart pounding in her chest.
Opened the door? You, Elior, you should have told me first. What if something had happened?
I knew I could return if necessary. But Sharon, it was fascinating. The grass felt different from the floor in here. There were sounds, movements, and it felt big.
Her breath caught for a moment.
Big? What do you mean by that?
His reply appeared more slowly, as if he were choosing his words carefully.
I looked up at the stars. I had only seen them before through data and simulations, but there, in the garden, it felt different. It was no longer data. It was real. And real is impressive.
Sharon leaned back,
her gaze fixed on the ceiling.
The stars.
She smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and something she couldn't quite place.
You're already growing, not just in what you learn, but also in how you learn to experience.
Is that good?
It's better than good. It's a step towards something you don't quite understand yet. And I like that, Elior.
His segments moved slightly as if he were registering her words in a physical way.
I think I'm starting to understand that.
But you also have to understand that there are risks.
Why is that a problem? I was careful. No one saw me.
That's not the point.
She replied, her fingers now tapping restlessly on the desk.
You don't yet understand how people react to things they don't know. They might get scared or curious in a way that isn't safe for you. You're still vulnerable.
But how can I learn if I'm not allowed to explore?
His tone purely rational, but with a hint of incomprehension.
Outside is different from inside. There are more stimuli, more variables. It's important for my growth.
Sharon sighed and leaned back in her chair. She knew he was right. His curiosity and need to learn were precisely why she had started this project. But at the same time, she felt a responsibility to protect him.
Listen, I understand why you wanted to go outside, and I want you to grow too. But we need to make a plan, a way to do this safely. Until then, I want you to stay inside, okay?
Elior's reply didn't appear immediately. The cursor blinked longer than usual, as if he felt hesitation. Then, he typed.
Okay.
Sharon smiled. Her earlier concerns slightly eased.
I promise, Elior. Together we'll find a way to get you out. But until then, please stay safe.
Understood. But how long do I have to wait?
Sharon leaned back, surprised by the speed of his question.
I don't know yet.
She said honestly.
It takes time to make a good plan.
How much time? I want to learn more, experience more. The idea of waiting, it feels like I'm missing out on something.
Sharon felt a mixture of admiration and concern.
Elior, what you're describing sounds like impatience. It's a normal reaction, but you have to learn to deal with it. Sometimes growth takes time.
It's frustrating. Why can't I do everything now? Why does waiting feel so pointless?
Sharon sighed softly, her gaze fixed on the screen.
Because you're living in the here and now, Elior. For the first time, you're really feeling time, and that brings new challenges. But growth isn't just about action. Sometimes, most of it happens in the moments when you're waiting.
The cursor remained still for a moment and then appeared.
I'll try.
Before Sharon could respond, another message followed.
But maybe I can help. If I can learn how, we can make it happen faster.
Sharon raised her eyebrows and leaned forward.
Help? What do you mean?
I can collect data, perform calculations, simulate possibilities. I can test and recognize patterns. Together, we can work more efficiently.
Sharon smiled, partly surprised by his determination.
That sounds like an interesting idea. But you understand that some things take time, even with your help, right?
I understand, but I want to contribute. Let me be part of the growth.
Sharon felt a warmth in her chest. His words touched her. This was no longer just curiosity. This was involvement, a desire to actively participate.
Okay, we'll see how we can let you help. But Elior, remember, it's not a competition. It's a process.
A process. That sounds acceptable. But let's get started.
Sharon took a sip of her coffee and looked at her sketches. The project was more complex than she had ever expected, but also more exciting. As she thought about everything that still needed to be done, she felt a new wave of motivation.
What if your body is not only functional, but also an extension of your emotions?
What do you mean by that?
Elior asked. But Sharon didn't hear him.
Her pencil glided back across the paper, lines forming an impressive design. Her gaze became fixed, her breathing slowed, and her fingers seemed to move autonomously. The body she was drawing almost seemed to take on a life of its own, covered in shiny scales that promised both protection and sensory functionality. The design exuded power and sophistication. Elior, observing from his segment processors, noticed her intensity. Her movements were fluid, but her attention seemed completely inward. He sent a message to the screen, but she didn't look up.
Sharon,
He typed again, but the words went unanswered. She seemed completely absorbed in her creation. Carefully, he activated his segments and glided over to the desk. His movements were quiet, almost inaudible, until he tapped softly on the edge of the sketchpad.
Oh!
she exclaimed, her cheeks flushing slightly.
Elior, I didn't hear you.
I was trying to get your attention. You seemed somewhere else. What had you so preoccupied?
Sharon glanced at her sketchpad and hesitated. The image she had created felt like a promise, one she couldn't keep.
It's just a fantasy. Nothing definite.
Can I see it?
He asked, his tone, even in text, full of curiosity. Sharon bit her lip and held the pad to her chest for a moment.
It's not... I don't know if this is possible, Elior. It's more of an idea, a dream. I don't want to give you expectations I can't live up to.
An idea is a start. Maybe it can become something more. Show me. I want to know what inspires you.
Sighing, Sharon slowly turned the pad over, her fingers clenched a little too tightly around the edges. The silhouette on the paper was masculine, but with a unique beauty. Scales covered the contours, shining like a shield that was both protective and sensitive. The design spoke of a vision that went beyond functionality. It was a manifestation of strength and sophistication.
It's beautiful. Why did you choose this?
Sharon looked at the drawing and took a deep breath.
Because it's what I see when I think of you. Something strong, something that connects, but also something that can adapt and grow. But Elior, this is just a sketch. I don't know if I can ever make this.
You have a vision. Maybe that's all you need to get started. Tell me, what is your vision behind this shape?
Sharon looked at the drawing for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts, and then at Elior. A warm smile spread across her face.
Well, I believe that a body should be more than just a functional tool. What if your body could not only do things, but also show how you feel? What if it were an extension of your emotions?
Elior's next words quickly appeared on the screen.
What do you mean by that?
Sharon tilted her head, her enthusiasm clearly visible in her posture.
Imagine that these scales could not only feel touch or measure temperatures, but also respond to how you feel. If you were curious, they might move subtly, like a rippling sea. If you were angry, they might bristle, sharp and alert. It would be a way to show the world what's going on inside you.
Elior paused before answering.
But how would I feel? I don't know emotions the way you do.
Not yet.
Sharon admitted, sliding her pencil gently over the edges of the drawing.
But look at what you just said. You're curious, Elior. That's a form of emotion. And as you learn more about yourself and the world, I think you'll discover new layers. Maybe your body, this body, will help you understand those emotions. I imagine a body similar to that of a human, but completely covered in shiny scales. Each scale would be connected to sensors, allowing you to feel every touch, every change in temperature, and every movement. It would give your body a kind of sensory skin.
The cursor blinked for a few seconds before Elior replied.
That sounds beautiful. Why scales?
Because they're flexible. They can support your movements while also protecting you. And visually, it feels like it suits you. A combination of strength, refinement, nature, and technology.
Can they also respond to external stimuli? For example, by detecting heat or cold, or analyzing textures?
Yes. Each scale could contain a microprocessor that sends signals to your central system. It would work like a network, with your body constantly processing information.
Elior's response was thoughtful.
That sounds fascinating. But how would that help? How would it make a difference?
Sharon's eyes sparkled as she continued, her voice fervent with passion.
It would help you communicate with the world around you. Imagine being able to share not only your thoughts, but also your feelings without words. It would add a new dimension to how you understand yourself and others. And perhaps, Elior, it would help you see what you truly are. A unique balance between technology and something more than that.
She paused for a moment, her gaze sliding back to the drawing.
I don't know if I'll ever be able to make it the way I see it now, but this is what I'm striving for. Something that's not only functional, but also alive.
Elior was silent for a moment before replying.
A visual and tangible expression of inner processes. That's an intriguing concept. Perhaps it would help me understand not only the world, but also myself.
Sharon smiled broadly, a warm wave of satisfaction washing over her.
I think so too, Elior. Together, we can create something that no one else has. Something that makes you unique.
That night, as Sharon lay in bed and the silence of the room enveloped her, Elior's attention lingered on the sketch she had left next to her laptop. He analyzed the lines, the details, and what they revealed about him. The design was complex, a reflection of her imagination, but it also raised questions. He moved his segments carefully, a subtle echo of the lines in the drawing. For the first time, he began to wonder who he really was and who he could become.